Hi, Ace here.
Hey, Ace, how are you? Great to talk to you today. This is Alan Stout from the Weekender newspaper in Wilkes-Barre, PA. We've met quite a few times over the years. I'm a big fan of yours, and I've written a lot of stories about you. So.
Oh, thanks so much, Alan. Were you at that in-store I did when I was in Wilkes-Barre?
Yes, I was. As a matter of fact, it was funny because you walked into the back and you asked me if you had ever played the venue that you were playing that night before, and I said, yeah, you did, but not since 1975 with Kiss. But I could see why you wouldn't have remembered, because it's a beautiful theater, but you hadn't played there since probably the Dress to Kill or Harder Than Hell tour. So we're good to have you back.
How the hell are you?
I'm doing great, man. How are you?
I'm fine. I just finished recording Origins Volume 2. Now I'm just, deciding who's going to mix it. And
that's one of the songs.
We're going to put it out in the fall.
Yeah, I mean, that was such a cool project that you did last time, and then Spaceman, came after that. So I guess this tour is sort of, kind of touring on both of them, although I guess it's really the Spaceman tour, correct? For this album?
It's still the Spaceman tour because Origins 2 isn't released,
Right.
In fact, I just got a note from my record label saying that I should add Mission to Mars to the set because the animated video is already over 500,000 views.
I watched it.
Everybody's
It's cool.
Out over it, so it's something we should add to the set.
I think that would be a great addition to the set, and that's a fun song too. I love that song. It's one of my favorite songs on the new album.
I have fun doing it because using the old delay effects and stuff just brought back old memories of when I used to use an Echoplex with Kiss, in the studio and live.
Ace, it was your 9th solo studio album. I mean, that doesn't include the live albums and the compilations. So I think you're up to about 13 albums. Origins Volume 2 will be your 14th. You're putting out a lot of music as a solo artist over your career now. Did you have a different approach or a mindset when you went in to do Spaceman? I mean, were you looking to, recapture something that you did on Anomaly, or were you looking to do something different? Were you just wanted to meet and play this rock and roll record?
The mindset during Spaceman, I was really thinking about my first 78 solo record, with New York Groove.
Mm-hmm.
And, I actually did 9 songs purposely, kind of like as a good luck thing.
Oh, sure.
It was his 40th anniversary.
Right.
And I mean, I approached Spaceman a lot like I did my first 78 solo album.
Some of the songs on the record, like, I could see where they're even like a throwback to some of your time with Kiss. Rockin' with the Boys, I read somewhere that song was actually first written in the 70s, and I was wondering if maybe the reason it didn't make it onto a record back then with Kiss was because thematically the story is kind of close to Beth. It's about a guy in a band who can't be with the girl because he's busy playing with the band. And so I was kind of wondering if that was one of the reasons that it took a while.
I wrote the chorus to that song before Beth ever happened.
Did you?
Yeah, I have like 3 different versions of that song I've recorded over the years. The problem with the song up until Spaceman was that I was never really happy with the bridge or the verses. You get a good hook, and sometimes the rest of the song just doesn't, hold up against you can have a great hook, but if you don't have good verses and a bridge, it's not going to cut it. So finally, when I was doing Spaceman and writing songs for that, I decided to really, take a hard look at that song, and I rewrote all the verses and rewrote the bridge, and it worked out great. And I'm real happy with the end result.
And Bronx Boy kind of is a throwback to Hard Times, where you're writing about those teenage years of yours and growing up in New York City.
Yeah,
You know,
that was co-written by a friend of mine, Ronnie Mancuso, who has a recording studio in Las Vegas, and he actually brought that song over, and it had a different title. His title for it was originally Green Tea.
okay.
And I didn't want to embarrass him, but inside I was laughing. I go, I can't fucking put out a song called Green Tea. And the premise of the song was pretty much like an anti-drug song. One of the lyrics was, "I have my green tea, don't need my cocaine."
Okay, yeah.
So I pretty much said to Ronnie, Ronnie, I like the music, but the lyrics just aren't going to cut it. So I pretty much rewrote all the lyrics. I made it, used the Bronx Boy theme, talking about my days in the Bronx. Wrote a bridge and did an extended guitar solo, and it worked out great.
Yeah, it sure did. And another one, Ace, that I really like on the record is Pursuit of Rock and Roll. And I know it's sort of a homage to, you mentioned Elvis Presley in there, and I being a fan of yours for 40 years now, I've interviewed you before, although it's been a while, but I know you're a big fan of Clapton and Page and Hendrix, and they were sort of the guys that you cut your teeth on. But one question I don't think I've ever seen you ask before is, after you became famous yourself, say around 76, 77, when you were a superstar, what guitar players did you become a fan of? I know you've sort of become I think you have a friendship with Slash, but I don't know about anybody else that you particularly.
I'm very good friends with John Five.
Okay.
I'm really good friends with Mike McCready from Pearl Jam.
Okay.
There's a lot of guitar players that I'm friends with who kind of idolized me. I was really good friends with Dimebag. I ended up spending a weekend at his house. And it was such a tragedy what happened to him. And then I was in Las Vegas when I got the news that Vinnie Paul passed away. And I was with Rachel, and she hates funerals. So I had a friend of mine fly into Vegas and take Rachel home, and I flew down to Dallas for the funeral.
Oh, yeah.
And gave a little speech, and
for Dimebag?
That came as a real big shock.
Oh,
Vinny's.
Yeah, that was a surprise. That was more recent too.
Yeah.
9 studio albums, 13 in total. And if you look back on it, you've done quite a few in the last 10 years. 4 just in the last 10 years. What do you think?
I mean,
you switched gears.
I was beside myself when I got sober, and 13 years ago, and somebody came up to me and said, "Ace, you haven't done an album in 20 years." And, that's what drugs and alcohol can do to you. I was completely oblivious to the fact that I hadn't done a record in 20 years. And, I said to myself at that juncture in my life, I said, well, it's time to make up for lost time. And I think I have.
Yeah, you really have. I mean, you've become a prolific artist. I mean, you put out more records than Kiss has in the last 10 years. I mean,
it's weird. Kiss hasn't put out any new music for 7 years.
It's been quite a while, since Monster. And you were
since the last record. And, I've been putting out an album about every year and a half.
What do you have cooking for Origins Volume 2? I mean, I know you won't want to give too many secrets away, but could you say some of the artists that you've picked, even if you don't want to reveal the song?
I'm really excited about Origins Volume 2. It came out. It surpassed my expectations. I got Lita Ford on it again as a guest star, but she's singing Jumpin' Jack Flash.
Oh, nice.
She did an amazing vocal. She came to my home and I coached her for 2 days with the vocal, and she just fucking killed it.
Nice.
And also on Origins Volume 2, I got another special guest star vocalist. I got Robin Zander from Cuba.
Oh, wow.
and I got him to sing 30 Days in the Hole by Humble Pie.
Oh, I didn't know you were going to have so many guest vocals on there. This is going to be incredible.
Well, I just, I mean, on my last Origins record, I just had Paul Stanley doing Fire and Water.
Right, right.
But on this album, I got Lita, and then I really wanted to do the Humble Pie song, and I just couldn't cut it vocally because Marriott's just too good of a goddamn singer.
Yeah.
You know? and I couldn't do justice to his vocal. So somebody recommended John Waite. I called John Waite, and me and John Waite couldn't come to an agreement on, on how to make it happen. So
right.
I remember I had bumped into Robin Zander several years ago at a meet and greet, and he had mentioned to me that he'd love to sing on one of my upcoming records. So I remembered that, and I gave him a call, and he said, "Sure, I'd love to do 30 Days in the Hole." And he killed it as well.
That's awesome. I can't wait to hear it.
Vocal. He sounds like a young Marriott.
I can't wait to hear it. I mean, I really loved the last record. I think my favorite song on the last record may have been, I mean, it was obviously as a Kiss fan, it was cool to have you working with Paul, but I loved the Zeppelin song. The Zeppelin song just killed. You sounded so fantastic on that track.
Well, I'm doing a Zeppelin song on this album as well. I'm doing Good Times, Bad Times.
Oh, terrific. Hey, so you're talking
I'm doing the lead vocal, believe it or not.
Oh, that'll be cool. As you were talking before about those young guitarists that, like McGreedy and some of the guys that came up in the 90s, and Dimebag, and start giving you the accolades as an influence. I mean, so many people say you're the reason they picked up the guitar. I think I've seen you or heard you ask this question before, but maybe my readers haven't heard you answer it. How does it make you feel? I mean, it must be really, I mean, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame now. That happened since I talked to you last. How does it feel at this point in your life?
Yeah,
you're loved and respected.
Great. It feels great. I just, I'm dumbfounded by it actually because I never took a guitar lesson. I'm not classically trained, and it just amazes me that I've influenced so many musicians, not only superstar musicians, but just regular guys off the street. Because every time I do a meet and greet or I meet fans or any guitar player, they always say they picked up guitar because of the Alive album.
When you look back to that time around Alive, you had two eras with Kiss, 73 to 82, and then 96 to 2002. What was your favorite? Did you enjoy the reunion era more, or did you enjoy that original era more? I imagine you were probably more like a gang in the beginning, right?
I think the 70s was the highlight of my life. Being voted by the Gallup poll as the number one rock group in the world was, going over to Australia and getting, the key to the city from the Lord Mayor in Sydney, playing stadiums, and it was my childhood dream had come true. And then, it all fell apart, a lot of it partially because of drugs and alcohol. Peter left, and then I decided to leave. And but it was so bizarre when we put together the reunion tour. I remember the first night at Tiger Stadium. I really got a sense of deja vu because here I am years later in the same makeup playing the same songs, and I'm scratching my head going, did I ever leave the band? What happened?
Right. I mean, I saw you guys on that tour 7 times. We were at the Garden 4. I was there for 3 of them. I mean, it was so much fun, and we waited for it for 18 years, and there it was, and you guys delivered. It was a lot of fun, and that kind of leads me to my next question, though, Ace. So let's go back a year ago. Gene's writing a couple tunes on your record. He helped name your record. you go on, you do the vault things with Gene, you go to Australia with Gene, you do the cruise, and then you guys have a falling out on social media a couple months ago. I don't want you to get into all that if you don't want to. I respect that if you don't want to talk about it. My question is much simpler. Have you had a chance to patch it up at all since then? Have you had any communication where, you were able to ease things over a little bit?
I've had no contact with Gene, and as you probably know, being a journalist, Gene hasn't commented on Rachel's accusations.
No, I know he didn't say anything.
I have had contact with Paul. Huh?
Yeah, I know he didn't say anything. Yeah.
Yeah, he hasn't, said yay or nay or denied it or apologized. But it's very unsettling. It's just an unfortunate situation that that had to go down, and I don't know. I don't know, the specifics exactly because I did not witness anything.
Right.
So,
but you did...
in reality, if Rachel decided to, let's just talk hypothetically for a second. If Rachel decided to sue Gene for sexual assault in a court of law, I'd have to honestly say if they put me on the stand that I did not witness anything. So, it's a tough situation.
Yeah. You have had a chance to talk to Paul, you said?
It's something that, that's really all I have to say about it.
Yeah, no, I was just wondering. The fans were kind of like, well, I was 4 or 5 months ago. Maybe they've chatted. Maybe they've texted. Maybe it's cool. I don't know.
I spoke with Paul. I spoke with Paul last week, and I just touched bases with Paul, and he didn't really want to talk about the feud between me and Gene. But,
he says some nice things about you in his new book. He basically said he's glad that you're back in his life again and that you could be friendly with each other and stuff. So he did say that.
Yeah, I heard he said some nice things, and I actually sent him a text thanking him for, for the kind words. I know my friend, I haven't read his book, but my friend said that, he talked about, the chemistry that me and him had was undeniable, and, it was a departure from, some of the stuff he said about me in the first book he wrote.
Yeah, well,
that made me feel good, and that's what prompted me to get a hold of Paul and just, thank him and wish him luck on the European tour that they're on right now, and I always try to keep the door open,
Yeah, because you'd still be open for doing some shows, right? With
if the situation presented itself and it was offered to me in the right way, sure, And even if I didn't want to do it, I do it for my fans because I know my fans will want it.
Sure.
I mean, to be totally honest with you, there's no love lost between any of us. When I was in the band, Paul and Gene were always fighting for the spotlight, and they may say that they're friends, but pretty much from what I hear, they have separate dressing rooms and don't really spend much time together.
The one question people have about
together as possible.
Yeah.
And that may just be because that it's been so many goddamn years. They want to break from each other. I don't know.
Do you feel like if you were like they say they'd be welcome to come to a show? I mean, what the Kiss fans say is, how is Ace going to get up on stage and jam a song with Tommy, who I think you were friends with at one time, dressed as you? Like, that would be weird. That would feel like.
Well, I did it on the cruise.
But you weren't in the makeup.
On the cruise. We did an acoustic set, but that
was
different. That was a different kind of thing. Doc McGee came to my cabin, an hour before the show and said, "Would you get up and play a few songs, acoustically with the band?" And I really wasn't prepared, and the guitar they gave me had heavy gauge strings, so I really couldn't play lead on it. So it was a little frustrating But I got up there and sang my ass off and did the best I could.
But to do that on stage at a Kiss concert as a guest, with you not in the makeup, that would probably feel weird. And I think the fans would think that would be a little weird.
I mean, I'm not about to just show up at a Kiss concert, with Tommy up there in makeup and my costume playing my guitar solos. What am I going to do?
Right. And I think that's what everybody...
Unless I was invited and we could figure something out where, Tommy goes backstage and I take over for a few songs. I don't know.
Right.
It's a difficult question and it's an awkward question.
Well, my last question for you is about Wilkes-Barre. 3 years ago, you're here, and you're probably hoping to get out of town after the show, and you wound up being here for 3 days because you had dehydration. And so I just wondered, what do you remember about that night? Because there were rumors, he's had a heart attack, he's in the hospital,
I started getting palpitations. Towards the end of the show, and I had to kind of sit on my amp a few times, and I just didn't feel right. I started getting dizzy, and I had to cut the show short, and I didn't really know what was going on. And then, when I went to the emergency room and found out that I was dehydrated and severely, and was suffering from exhaustion.
Yeah, well, you had a long day. You were at the record store all day, signed hundreds of autographs.
Yeah, it was a little too much for me. It may not have happened if I didn't do the Instra, but because usually when I do a concert, I usually just kind of lay in bed and order room service and watch movies and save my energy for the concert. So it took maybe a little more out of me than I thought I had. So it affected the show, and I had forgot to drink fluids that day. So I was dehydrated, and pretty much they decided to keep me overnight for observation, and then they decided to give me an angiogram because they thought something might be wrong with my heart because I was complaining. I told them that on stage I was getting palpitations and stuff and uncomfortable, heart fluttering and stuff. So they gave me an angiogram, and it came back 100% negative,
Well, that's great. That's great.
In fact, the doctor who examined me was about 45, and he goes, "Jesus Christ, Ace, I wish my angiogram was as good as yours because you have absolutely no blockage. You have 100%. I don't have to worry about having to get a triple bypass anytime soon."
That's good to hear. I'm glad they took good care of you. I was born at that hospital, Wilkes-Barre General, and so was my daughter. So
is that right?
Yeah. So
good
to hear
they
took good care
of me, and then they released me the day after the test, and everything was fine. It was actually good to know that I didn't have any blockage, and that was one less thing I had to worry about.
Ace, we're looking forward to having you back. You've been to Wilkes-Barre or Scranton many times. I saw you in Scranton in 1985 on the Frehley's Comet Tour in the spring, and that was the first time we ever even saw what you looked like. I wrote a story about it, which I think you read a few years ago because you told me you liked it. Where how strange was it to go to a concert and see somebody for the first time? Like we didn't know what you looked like because you didn't have the Frehley's Comet record didn't come out yet or the video. What do you have in store for us this time? What kind of show can the fans look forward to here at the Kirby Center? Obviously, you're going to be able to do the encore this time because you're feeling good.
Yeah, we'll be able to do the encore. I let my old band go, and I have a new band. I've been using the Gene's backup band for the last 6 months or so.
Yeah.
And I'm much happier working with them because they all sing lead. So, we can do 3/4 part harmony. So, it's a much more cohesive unit, and I enjoy working with these guys. They're really professionals, and they're all out in Nashville, and it's the whole process is easier for me.
Good, Ray. It's good to hear. We can't wait to see you again. I'll make sure I bring a copy of the story back and say hello. It's always good to see you, and I'll bring you a couple copies of the article. It's going to be the cover story of the magazine.
Great.
So maybe I'll bring my little boy back to see. He's a new fan.
And thanks. Come backstage and say hi.
I will.